At 16, I was told that I was a burden and should leave the house. I left quietly. Years later, when I returned, the circumstances had changed and the same people were surprised at how far the girl they had thrown out had come. I was 16 when it was said. It wasn't shouted, not screamed across the room, just spoken clearly enough that it echoed long after. We can't take care of you anymore. My mother kept her eyes fixed on the television, as if the screen might absorb the weight of her words. My stepfather stood near the door, stiff and impatient like someone returning an item to a store. I picked up my bag. Inside were 2 shirts, 1 pair of jeans and shoes whose soles were already worn thin. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I nodded once and closed the door behind me. Outside the air was cold. Night falls early on Oklahoma roads and the darkness felt bigger than it should have. Sitting at the bus stop, I tried to imagine the next step. I didn't have a real plan. Just one phone number. Mrs. Howard, the school librarian who had once said, "If you ever need help, come find me." I called her. She asked, "Where are you?" I said, "At a bus stop." She replied, "Oi, stay there." The first months were hard in ways I didn't yet have words for. I stayed in school. In the evenings, I washed dishes at a diner. At night, I slept in a small room above someone's garage. I learned how to live quietly, how to count every dollar, how to arrive on time, how to stay invisible and useful. I also learned that people tend to ignore you as long as you keep working and don't ask for more. When I turned 18, I finished high school. No family came to graduation. Mrs. Howard clapped loudly and said, "You did this yourself." I carried that sentence with me like something valuable folded into a pocket. I enrolled in a community college. Night classes, day shifts at work. Loans came. Bills followed. But I had learned how to track numbers, how to plan ahead. I never called home. There wasn't anger in that decision and there wasn't love either. Just a straight line I refused to cross. My 20s were not a smooth climb. I moved from one apartment to another, from one job to the next. I lived stretches without health insurance, numbed toothaches with coffee, and once worked an entire shift with the flu because rent doesn't pause for sickness. Still, every year I added something. One certificate, one reference, a little savings. I had promised myself I would never hold out my hand to anyone, but over time I learned something important. Asking for help is not the same as begging. It took me years to understand that difference. In my early 30s, I landed a small contract. Then another. I didn't become anyone extraordinary. No dramatic success story. I simply became the woman in the office people trusted to get things done. Eventually, I bought a modest house. The mortgage was long, but the key was mine. The first time I saw a utility bill with my own name printed on it, I smiled. It wasn't a loud smile. Didn't need to be. I didn't choose to go back. My mother fell ill. A cousin messaged me, "It would be good if you could come." I thought about it for a while. I didn't feel rage, just a familiar weight. In the end, I bought a ticket. The house was the same and yet it wasn't. The lawn was dry, the paint on the door peeling. Inside, the silence felt different from the night I had left years earlier. My mother lay in bed, weak now but with the same sharpness in her eyes. She said, "You've changed." I replied, "I grew up." My stepfather said nothing. He watched me closely like someone trying to recognize an old photograph. For several days I handled practical things. Doctor appointments, medications, paperwork. No one apologized. I didn't ask them to. One evening we sat in the kitchen. My mother said, "Things were difficult back then." I answered, "They were for me too." The sentence wasn't loud or soft. It was simply true. A neighbor stopped by, someone who had known me as a child. She said, "We heard you're doing well in the city." There was surprise in her voice. I said, "I'm okay." And okay I had learned could hold many things at once. Old wounds, long effort, and the quiet strength built over time. Eventually, the conversation turned to paperwork. Debts, missed payments, a request for help. I looked at the numbers. Then I said, "I can help but with conditions." They stared at me. I continued, respect. And acknowledgement, that I was sent away, and that I carried myself forward alone. My mother closed her eyes. My stepfather spoke for the first time, his voice low. "We were wrong." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was enough. I helped, within limits. I paid some bills, made a plan, and said clearly that I would not stay. I had built a life and I wasn't giving it back. On the drive home, I stopped on my street as the sun set. I thought of that 16-year-old walking toward the bus stop with a thin bag and no map. I honored her silently. She wasn't weak. She was just alone, and being alone sometimes teaches faster than comfort ever could. I hadn't returned for revenge. I came quietly, the same language I had learned to survive. The difference was that now, silence wasn't my weakness. It was my strength, because I knew when to speak and when not to. They were surprised by how far I had come. I wasn't. I had built the road myself step by step, and at last I stood on it in my own name. If this story touched you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more real, honest stories to life. Share it with someone who's quietly working on themselves. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for valuing strength that grows in silence.